Hi everyone, welcome to Shell's Sugar Rush and welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to share with you these beautiful candy apples that I've made. And while I was on this journey of making the candy apples, I also had several fails. So I thought I would share also with you those tips and tricks that I learned to make the perfect candy apple. So if you enjoy videos like this, stick around and let's make some candy apples. So for this first batch, I've removed my candy off the stove after bringing it to that hard crack stage of 301 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I added some white Wilton color into there just to give it that base. And my attempt here was to do a swirl look. So I've got 4 different gel colors here. And what I did is just drop, I actually put a drop of the red in and swirled that first apple. Now, because I was dropping the colors and dipping right away, I think this caused a lot of bubbles on the surface for me. Because if you've done this before, when you add color into it, it's going to bubble a bit until it settles. So I continued to dip, and as the color settled in, I did get less bubbles. But to do this, with the swirl pattern, it was a bit of a challenge at first. Another thing that I realized pretty quickly is that I definitely needed to use a smaller pot for this, so my candy mixture would be higher in the pot. So for the second attempt, you can see that I did change the size of the pot so that my mixture would be a little deeper and easier to dip. Again, I heated it to that hard crack stage and added a little bit of the white gel color, and then I added some blue and green and proceeded to dip my apples and give them that swirl look. Now, while I did let this one settle so that there were less bubbles, I still did end up getting some bubbles, but the biggest lesson learned here was the type of syrup that I was using. In the recipe, it does call for half a cup of light corn syrup. So I did see a lot of people say that they used Karo corn syrup because they had used store brands and it just didn't work out well for them. Well, of course, I didn't listen to that and I used what I had in the cabinet. So with this, I learned that the apples actually never got hard on the outside. They stayed pretty chewy, the candy did. It stayed pretty chewy. And actually, if it touched anything or they touched each other, then they were binded for life. So, of course, after this experience, I did go to the store and buy a couple of bottles of Karo corn syrup. And I actually lowered it from 1/2 a cup of syrup to 1/3 cup of syrup, which worked out well. And of course, I will include the recipe in the description box below the video for you all. Now here, third attempt. So I've brought my mixture up to that hard crack stage. I've added the white, and I actually realized that I had run out of the red gel food coloring. So here I used just a liquid water-based food coloring, which was definitely not a good idea. But as I mixed this up, I noticed that immediately it started to get pretty thick. And usually you have plenty of time to dip several apples in this. So this was unusual, but I started dipping the apples and the first one seemed to come out fine. And on the second apple, I realized that my candy mixture was kind of seizing up. So of course, at this point, I could not dip anymore. So this one was done. So they say the third time is a charm, but for me it was the fourth. So I've done a few things different here. And as I was bringing my mixture to that hard crack stage on the stove, I actually put my food coloring in when it got to about between 200 and 250 Fahrenheit. I went ahead and put my white food coloring in, and I also used a purple gel food color, just a few drops of that because I wanted just a soft but beautiful purple color for this. So I went ahead and mixed the color in while it was on the stove and then continued to bring it to that 300 degree mark. And then I brought it off, as you saw, and let the bubbles settle down. And I always, one thing is you always want to have an extra of everything. So this first one is kind of my extra. So I dipped that first one and just kind of rolled it around in there, and it came out just absolutely beautiful. And with this mixture and this recipe, I was able to dip all 9 of these apples. And like I said, they just came out absolutely beautiful. So I was very pleased with this time around and felt like I had perfected them at this point. Now, another thing I did want to be sure and tell you about is an experience I had with one pot of my mixture, and I actually had to throw this one away. So I guess that was 4 fails actually. But because I had run out of the red gel color, I decided that I would try the red candy color also. So in doing so, when I put the drops of candy color in the mixture while it was on the stove, it started to boil over and just bubble, and it continued to bubble till I removed the pot from the stove. And although I thought it would settle, each time I put it back on the stove, it just continued to boil over. So I actually had to discard that batch altogether and start over. So you definitely don't want to use candy color in this. I'm not sure what the reasoning is for that, but apparently maybe something that has to do with it being oil-based. You just definitely don't want to use candy color. So the perfect color to use for this is always gel color. Now, as far as storing the apples, I will tell you here, now if you dip your apples and you get that candy all the way up to the stick, then you've sealed the apple really well. And this is a good thing because it's going to last longer. This way it's going to last a week or 2 in the refrigerator because it's not exposed to the air. Now, if you, of course, as you get to the bottom of the pot here, it is more difficult to get that candy all the way up to the stick as your mixture gets less and less. So if you have a gap in the top where the apple is exposed, then you're probably looking at more like 2 to 3 days in the refrigerator for the lifespan of the apple. Now, I did prepare each batch of apples for dipping the same way, and the way I do this is just take a large pot of water and add a couple tablespoons of white vinegar to that, and I bring that to a boil on the stove and then turn that off, and then a few at a time I'll add the apples in, and I just add them in and just roll them around for maybe 10 to 20 seconds, and then I pull them out and take a dishcloth and just wipe them down real well to get that wax coating off. And then I set them on really just a cookie sheet, and I let them set overnight because of course the apple is going to excrete that syrup, those little syrup or sap balls. And so then the next morning I wipe them down again and get all that syrup off and put my sticks in and have them ready for dipping. I really hope that my fails and tips and tricks here are really going to help you get your apples perfect the first time around, so you won't have to go through what I went through with these. Now I'm just going to add a little decor to these. I wanted to give it a gold splatter, so what I did here is used a little bit of Sugar Art Diamond Dust in the 10 karat gold, and I added about a teaspoon of lemon extract and just took my brush and swirled that together and just splattered it on the apples for this gorgeous gold splatter look. So our gorgeous apples are ready. I hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and make sure you let me know in the comments if you make them yourself. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the notifications bell so you'll be notified when I upload more videos in the future. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you next time.